Lockdowns trapped us in our homes, but for some, the real prison was their own mind. Tonight, I'm sharing 8 true stories from the 2020 global lockdown that pushed people to the edge of sanity, where isolation became a gateway to pure psychological terror. These aren't just scary stories. They're real, raw, and will make you question what's waiting in the silence of your own home. Stay with me for the next hour and 20 minutes, if you can handle the truth. When the world shut down in March 2020, Emily Carter, a graphic designer in Portland, Oregon, moved into a small apartment to ride out the quarantine alone. She was used to working from home, her days filled with the soft click of her keyboard and the distant hum of the city outside her window. At first, the lockdown felt manageable, just her laptop, and a stack of takeout menus. But as weeks bled into months, the silence grew heavy, oppressive, like a weight pressing down on her chest. Emily started hearing sounds at night, faint scratches from the ceiling, like nails dragging across wood, slow and deliberate. She lived on the top floor of a 3-story building, no neighbors above her, just a sealed-off attic the landlord swore hadn't been opened in years. She tried to dismiss it old pipes, maybe rats, but the scratches became rhythmic, almost intentional, forming patterns she couldn't quite decipher. She'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, her heart pounding as the sounds grew louder, closer, sometimes stopping right above her bed, as if whatever was up there knew she was listening. Emily started recording the noises on her phone, but the files came out distorted, buried in static with a low, guttural hum that made her skin crawl. She began to feel watched, not just at night but during the day, as if the apartment itself was studying her every move. One evening, while moving a bookshelf to rearrange her cramped living room, she found a trapdoor in the ceiling, its edges so flush with the plaster, she swore it hadn't been there before. Her hands shook as she climbed a chair and pried it open, the hinges groaning like a low moan. The air inside was cold, thick with the smell of damp earth and something sour, like decay. She shone her phone's flashlight into the darkness and saw scratches carved into the wooden beams, jagged and deep, forming words. "You're not alone." Emily's sleep dwindled to nothing, her days blurring into nights as she obsessively checked the trapdoor, locking it, boarding it, only to find it open again by morning. She started seeing shadows in her peripheral vision, fleeting, human-shaped, but gone when she turned. Her journal, later found by a friend, was filled with frantic entries. "It knows when I'm awake." The scratches are inside the walls now. She installed a motion sensor camera to watch the trapdoor, but the footage showed only static, except for one frame, a blurry figure standing in her living room, its head tilted, staring directly at the camera. Emily called the landlord, who laughed it off, saying the attic had been sealed for decades, but a maintenance worker checked and found nothing but dust and cobwebs. Yet Emily insisted something was living up there, whispering her thoughts back to her, mimicking her voice in the dead of night. She stopped answering calls. Her emails became incoherent, filled with random strings of numbers and pleas for help. One night, her neighbor heard her scream, "It's in the house!" Police arrived to find the apartment empty, the trapdoor wide open, and Emily's journal on the floor, its final entry reading, "I'm not Emily anymore." She was never found. The new tenants report hearing scratches at night, and some say the trapdoor reappears, no matter how many times it's sealed shut. Was Emily's mind crumbling under the weight of isolation? Or was something in that apartment breaking her, piece by piece? Solitude can summon things we don't understand, wrote Dr. Laura Hensley, a psychologist studying lockdown effects, in a 2021 paper. The sound of scratching grows faint, swallowed by a low, unsettling hum. In April 2020, Daniel Ortiz, a college student in Miami, Florida, was stuck in his dorm room during the campus lockdown. With classes moved online and the hallways deserted, the silence was deafening, broken only by the constant buzz of his laptop. his lifeline to the outside world. Daniel was a tech-savvy kid, always tinkering with gadgets, but he started noticing something odd. His webcam light flickered on when he wasn't using it, a green glow piercing the dark of his room. He'd cover it with tape, but the light bled through, like an eye refusing to close. At first, he thought it was a glitch, maybe a software bug. But then his laptop began acting on its own, opening files he hadn't touched. Old photos from high school, journal entries he'd deleted years ago, even a childhood drawing he swore he'd burned. One night, his screen lit up with a video call. No caller ID, just darkness on the other end. But he heard breathing slow, deliberate, like someone was listening. Daniel's paranoia took root. He'd unplugged his laptop, but the battery wouldn't die, the screen flickering back to life. He started seeing his own face in video calls. But it wasn't him. His reflection moved differently, smiled when he didn't, its eyes too wide, too still. He wrote in a Reddit post, later deleted, "It's using my face to talk to me." Sleep became impossible. He'd sit in the dark, watching the webcam light, convinced it was recording his every thought. He began taping over every reflective surface, mirrors, windows, even his phone screen. But the feeling of being watched clung to him like damp cloth. One night, desperate to prove he wasn't losing it, Daniel live-streamed himself on a platform, begging viewers to tell him what they saw. Hundreds watched as he sat in his dorm, the webcam light glowing. But in the background, viewers saw something else. A figure, blurred, mimicking his every move, its face featureless. The stream cut out abruptly, and Daniel's dorm was found empty the next morning. His laptop still on, displaying a single message: "You can't log out." Campus security found no trace of him, no sign of forced entry. His Reddit account posted one final message weeks later, untraceable: "It's not me anymore." Students in that dorm still report their webcams turning on at night, and some say they see Daniel's face in their screens, staring back, unblinking. Was it the isolation driving him mad, or was something hijacking his reality through the lens of his own technology? Technology can become a mirror to things we shouldn't see, said a university IT specialist in a 2020 interview. The sound of a webcam clicking on echoes, then dissolves into static. In May 2020, Clara Nguyen, a single mother in Leeds, England, was confined to her small, creaky house with her 8-year-old son, Ethan, during the UK's strict lockdown. The old house groaned with every gust of wind, but Clara made it a home, filling it with Ethan's crayon drawings and the warm smell of her baking. As the weeks dragged on, the isolation tightened its grip, and Clara started hearing knocks on the front door at exactly 2 a.m. She'd creep to the door, heart racing, peering through the peephole to find nothing but the empty street, bathed in the sickly glow of a single street lamp. The knocks grew louder, more insistent, sometimes coming from inside the house walls, ceilings, even the locked basement door. She installed a doorbell camera, hoping to catch the intruder, but the footage showed only the sound of knocking, clear and rhythmic, with no one in sight. Ethan began talking about a visitor who came at night, a shadow that stood at his window, whispering his name in a voice that wasn't Clara's. She dismissed it as a child's imagination, but Ethan's drawings chilled her tall, featureless figures with long fingers pressed against the glass, their outlines smudged like they were bleeding into the paper. Clara stopped sleeping, her nights spent pacing with a baseball bat, listening for the knocks, her days clouded by dread. She started seeing the figure too, not just at night, but in daylight, a shadow at the edge of her vision, gone when she turned. Her journal, later found by her sister, was filled with desperate scrawls. "It's not outside anymore. It's in here with us." She called the police, who found no signs of intrusion. Just an old house settling, they said. But Clara insisted the visitor was real, living in the shadows, watching her and Ethan. One night, neighbors heard her scream, "It's taking him." When police arrived, the house was empty. The front door ajar, the doorbell camera showing one frame of shadow at the door. Too tall, its shape wrong, like it didn't belong in this world. Clara and Ethan were gone. No trace, no leads. The house was sold, but new owners report knocking at 2A. And some say Ethan's drawings reappear on the walls, no matter how many times they're painted over. Was Clara's mind crumbling under the strain of lockdown? Or was something invited into their home, slipping through the cracks of their isolation? Isolation doesn't just trap us. It opens doors, wrote a local priest in a 2020 community newsletter. The sound of knocking grows faint and stops, leaving only a suffocating silence. In June 2020, Michael Hayes, a freelance writer in Brooklyn, New York, was holed up in his tiny studio apartment, the city's lockdown turning his world into 4 walls and a flickering Wi-Fi connection. Michael thrived on solitude, but the endless quiet began to feel alive, like the air itself was listening. He started noticing his radio, an old analog model, tuning itself at night, picking up static laced with whispers, fragments of voices saying his name, his deadlines, his fears. He'd unplug it, but the static returned, louder, seeping from the walls. Michael began transcribing the whispers, filling notebooks with phrases like, "You read running out of time, and we see you writing." Sleep evaded him. He'd sit by the radio, pen in hand, convinced it was trying to tell him something. One night, the radio broadcast a voice his own, reading a story he hadn't written yet. He smashed it, but the whispers continued, now from his laptop, his phone, even his own throat. His notes, found later, read, "It's not my voice anymore." Neighbors reported hearing him muttering through the walls, "They're writing me now." Michael disappeared, his apartment empty except for a notebook filled with the same sentence, written in different handwriting. "We're here." The radio, repaired by a new tenant, still picks up static at night, laced with Michael's voice. Was the lockdown breaking him, or was something speaking through the static? "Silence can carry voices we're not meant to hear," said a neighbor in a 2020 police report. The crackle of static fades, replaced by a faint whisper. In July 2020, Sarah Lynn, a teacher in rural Alberta, Canada, was isolated in her farmhouse during a lockdown, miles from the nearest town. The endless fields outside her window felt like a cage, the wind carrying a low hum that never stopped. Sarah began finding objects moved keys on the wrong hook, books open to pages she hadn't read. She blamed forgetfulness, but then she found words written in dust on her windows. Stay. At night, she'd hear footsteps circling the house, heavy and uneven, but no tracks were ever found in the dirt. Sarah started seeing a figure in the fields, too far to make out, always standing still, watching. She'd lock the doors, draw the curtains, but the hum grew louder, vibrating in her bones. Her diary read, "It's waiting for me to invite it in." One night, she woke to find the front door open, the figure closer, just beyond the porch. Sarah vanished the next day, her diary left open to a final entry. "I said yes." The farmhouse is abandoned now, but locals hear the hum on windy nights. Was it her mind, or was the land alive? "The prairies hold secrets," said a farmer in 2020. Footsteps crunch in the dirt, then stop. In August 2020, James Patel, an accountant in Sydney, Australia, worked from his high-rise apartment during the lockdown. The city's hum was gone, replaced by a stillness that felt wrong. James started noticing his clocks running backward, ticking in reverse at random hours. He'd reset them, but they'd revert, the hands spinning wildly. At night, he'd hear a faint ticking from inside the walls, like a heartbeat. He began seeing glimpses of himself in mirrors older, gaunt, staring back with eyes that weren't his. His emails to colleagues grew erratic. Time is wrong here. One night, he recorded himself sleeping. The footage showed him sitting up, staring at the mirror, speaking in a voice not his own. You're late. James was found catatonic, surrounded by stopped clocks. His apartment's mirrors are gone, but tenants report ticking at night. Was time breaking him, or something else? Time can trap you, said a therapist in 2020. A clock ticks backward, then falls silent. In September 2020, Laura Kim, a nurse in Atlanta, Georgia, lived alone in a rented duplex during the lockdown. Exhausted from hospital shifts, she'd collapse into bed, but began waking to find her furniture rearranged, chairs facing walls, tables moved inches. She blamed sleepwalking, but security cameras showed nothing, just her sleeping undisturbed. Then she found fingerprints in the dust, not hers, too large. Lavra started hearing laughter, soft and childlike, from the other side of the duplex, which was empty. She'd check, finding only silence, but the laughter followed her, echoing in her dreams. Her notes read, "It's playing with me." One night, she woke to every chair in her home facing her bed, the laughter deafening. Lavra vanished, her camera showing one frame, a child's shadow standing over her. The duplex is vacant, but neighbors hear laughter. Was it her mind or a game? Homes can hold memories that aren't ours, said a realtor in 2021. Laughter fades to silence. In October 2020, Ethan Walsh, a retiree in Galway, Ireland, was locked down in his seaside cottage. The waves outside were his only company, but they began carrying whispers, names he hadn't heard in years, old friends, lost loves. At night, he'd see faces in the water, staring up from the surf. Ethan started writing the names on his walls, convinced the sea was speaking. His letters read, "It wants me to join them." He'd stand at the shore, shouting back, his voice lost in the wind. Neighbors found his cottage empty, the walls covered in names, the tide unusually high. Fishermen report seeing Ethan's face in the waves at dusk. Was the sea calling him, or was his mind drowning? "The ocean remembers what we forget," said a local in 2020. Waves crash, then grow still. These 8 stories, Emily, Daniel, Clara, Michael, Sarah, James, Lavra, Ethan, aren't just about fear. They're about what happens when isolation turns your world into a prison, and something else slips through the cracks. A scratch in the attic, a webcam's glow, a knock at the door, whispers and static. Was it all in their minds, or was the lockdown letting something in? Which story haunts you the most? Drop it in the comments. And if you felt something stir in your own lockdown, I need to hear it. Hit that like button if you're still trembling. Subscribe if you're brave enough for more. And share this with someone who needs a chill down their spine. But be warned, some doors don't close once they're opened. Have you ever felt something watching you in the silence of your home? Tell me if you dare.